Let's jump to the story from the Post Millennial. Texas installs more razor wire on Eagle Pass border after Supreme Court said Biden could remove it. Texas will not back down from our efforts to secure the border in Biden's absence. I was thinking about Civil War earlier today, and Fort Sumter, the start of the Civil War, we say Fort Sumter. And then there's the first Battle of Bull Run or the Battle of Manassas. And I'm thinking, I wonder if in 100 years they're going to say the first battle at Eagle Pass, or they're going to say Eagle Pass was the start of the Second Civil War. I don't know. It could just, we can't see the future. It'll be hindsight being 2020. 100 years from now, they're going to look back and who knows? They could say the 2020 election. They could say January 6th. They could say a lot of things. But right now, what we're looking at is an escalation of what is effectively a Fort Sumter-esque moment. I said it was literally Fort Sumter, and Ian got mad and he said, no, it's figuratively because they're not actually there. And I'm like, no, I am saying it is literally the circumstances of Fort Sumter. In this instance, the federal government has asserted its jurisdiction on a border. However, it is facilitating criminal actions. Customs and Border Protection agents are committing crimes, serious humanitarian violations and criminal activities. Texas is trying to stop them, deploying armed soldiers. I think people should understand. It's fascinating when I talk about Civil War several years ago, and people are like, you really think there's going to be like armed soldiers marching against the federal government?
It turns out.
Texas deployed armed National Guard to push out the feds who have went to the Supreme Court, asserted their jurisdiction here, and Texas said, F off.
And
what does the federal government do?
Well, as long as Texas is going to hold the line, which I think is awesome, and I support them doing that, I think that we need to encourage more red states to follow suit, like West Virginia, for instance, Ohio, Kentucky. Send in the National Guard as well to give them some backup right now.
You think we should send in the National Guard to Texas?
Well, Texas's National Guard is there. Right. I believe that they're going to hold the line on this issue of our country being invaded right now. I would love to see West Virginia send ours in there to send backup.
That's such a huge escalation.
Yeah, well, I think that that's warranted at this point.
You have no idea what I would do if I was the governor of West Virginia.
Same. That's what if I was in charge, I would. I'm not talking 10 people to get a headline. I would send the National Guard down there, and I would encourage my surrounding states to do the same.
And governors have done this in the past.
I would instruct the West Virginia National Guard to seize the CBP facility over on 340. We know for a fact CBP agents, they're on camera smuggling humans.
Yep.
Children. Sex trafficking,
it is insane to me. There was a video I showed earlier where someone actually interviewed one of these agents as they're facilitating human smuggling, working with cartels. And they go, well, it's crazy. They're letting them in. And the guy, I don't know who actually produced the video. He says, it's strange because when they say they're being allowed in, it's CBP who's doing it. Mm-hmm. Now, there's a facility over in West Virginia, not too far away from here, a massive CBP facility.
I didn't know this. I didn't know that.
Oh, it's right over there. Yeah.
And I'm wondering, how could anyone work? I don't care if you're slinging coffee.
Yeah.
We know for a fact that CBP agents are engaged in human trafficking right now. Children working with cartels, breaking the law, and are staging. They are the villains, the bad guys fighting against the sovereignty and the law. And there are people in West Virginia who are like, it's my job.
Yeah.
It's my job. Oh, well, you're a scumbag.
But I think this question of how will we remember this period of history is really interesting. Like you're saying, are we going to look back at this and say, is this the Battle of Eagle Pass? To me, it reminds me more of the standoff at Ruby Ridge, right? There was a time when we saw the federal government being aggressive and we waited to see what would happen. In this case,
Ruby Ridge was a handful of people.
But what I'm saying is it's interesting to look back and say, at the time, the federal government said we're justified in what we're doing. And we look back and say, like, was that the correct thing to do? Will we look back at the border, people who don't necessarily see illegal immigration as a problem, and will they look back at it and say,
regret it?
Yeah. Will they say, oh, we should have let the razor wire stay? We know why Texas is. We understand this now because we live with the consequences of those actions.
Well, and this is why this is not a time for weak politicians. I mean, it really isn't. This is a time where we need some patriots to get involved in politics. We have too many politicians in politics because a politician's not going to send in the National Guard from West Virginia, Ohio, or Kentucky, but a patriot, someone like Carrie Lake, because she was in charge of Arizona right now. I guarantee you their National Guard would be doing the same thing right now at the Arizona border.
Well, that was one of her campaign promises.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think West Virginia state governance should immediately have an investigation into the CBP facility.
Yes.
They should be subpoenaing records. They should be getting warrants. They should be going through all their documents. To what degree is the CBP in West Virginia working with or facilitating the trafficking that's happening at the border? Because we know, and I'm wondering how much this affects West Virginia, we know that CBP is bringing these people to airports, to bus charters, and having them sent around the country. In an interview, one of these guys says they're given a $2,000 or $3,000 gift card.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they're given accommodation and places to sleep. I do not believe West Virginia is not one of these destinations. I think it is extremely likely these people are being sent here to the extent that they can be due to infrastructure. I think the fact that we know and have seen on video, and you can go down there and witness it for yourself, that CBP agents are engaged in human trafficking, that's more than enough probable cause for the legal apparatus of West Virginia to go in with a bunch of guys in police jackets and start ripping through those documents to figure out what it is CBP is doing and why they're doing it. I think anybody who works for CBP at this point who hasn't resigned over this is a scumbag.
Well, and let me just say, if our West Virginia elected legislators and elected officials are not going to do that, then they should everyone be primaried and kicked out of office, because if they don't have the courage to step up and do that when it's happening in our state, because everybody loves to sit back and say, oh, this is happening over in another. This is happening. I didn't know this is happening in West Virginia. This is crazy to me because I'm on the other side of the state.
We don't know what is happening.
Well, I know, but I mean that there was a facility there. I should say. I didn't know this, and so I agree. I think that at the very least there should be some proper investigations into that. We know there's 85,000 missing children that we know of right now.
Well, and there's got to be more than that, right? Because
exactly.
There's a rule, and this was like a judge who said that it was like the Flores settlement, this whole thing. So basically, like, a judge said that children need to be released, unaccompanied minors need to be released. They can't be held without, for like a very long time or whatever. And they were very displeased with the conditions that children were being held in. So it was like, okay, the children have to be released. Children would be released. There'd be sponsors, etc. DHS doesn't even know who the sponsors are. There's no vetting. And then after, and this was like when was the Flores thing? It was like in the 90s or something like that, but it keeps coming up. And then Obama took the Flores settlement and was like, okay, well, we're going to have to separate the kids from the adults. And that's how family separation started. You separate the kids from the adults so that the kids would be released, but you wouldn't be releasing the adults. And then this, it comes up again, and it turns out now you have to release the adults with the children if they come across, and it creates this golden ticket situation, and you don't even know who the adults are. And you have, like, so many reporters have gone down and reported on the border, showing that people, before they cross the border, they'll ditch their ID documents.
Yeah, they show them laying there around the border.
There's
and people need to remember, your tax dollars are paying for our own government. You're aiding and abetting the child sex trafficking of children.
They're doing
in our country right now.
It's
crazy.
When you look at the effect and the impact, you can only start to believe that this is what they wanted to happen.
Absolutely.
They must want a huge cartel-backed child sex ring happening in the United States. They must want lots of our citizens to be dying from fentanyl overdoses. They must want that.
Well,
they must want the destruction of our cities.
Show that. They are literally, like, think about it. At one point, they were saying the borders closed, and they were just saying it was blind. But then Texas, it starts building their own barriers, and the Joe Biden administration, the Democrats, are actively suing to open it back up
every time.
So they can't even hide from this anymore and pretend that it's not.
But then they say,
policy.
Congress has to do something.
Yeah.
But we're going to sue, so we have the right to do it. And I would veto any bill that came across
They're literally
my desk.
fighting to open the border and allow our country to be invaded. Like, there's no way around it.
The bad guys here are the CBP agents themselves.
Yeah.
They're the Nazi guards.
And
they're the Nazi guards.
I will say this right now. I will lighten up a little bit. To the CBP agents that may hear this, I assume if you're just now finding out, like, let's say you work in the facility over off 340, and you're filing paperwork and you do accounting stuff and you have no idea what's going on. Okay, I think it's fair that upon discovery of what the Biden administration is doing, you resigning is the noble thing to do. For those that know exactly what's going on and what's being done and either are complicit, involved in it, or knowing it's happening, don't care and say, leave me out of it, I'll take my paycheck. I will say, there is nothing I pray for more right now than to see these people rot in prison for the rest of their lives. You can come to me and you can offer me an infinity pool, a Ferrari, and a great mansion. I'll say, I want none of those things. You come to me and say, we'll give you one thing. I say, I want those people arrested. I want them in jail. I want each and every one of these CBP agents that's down there on the border arrested by the Texas National Guard and Texas State Troopers and locked up. And I want them to cry and say, but why? And it's because you're a human smuggler, you scumbags. These people are abject evil. They are quite literally I should say figuratively, the demons in the devil's army. I mean that figuratively, perhaps some people believe it literally. This smuggling operation that we are seeing that has Eric Adams in panic, Democrats freaking out, people in Chicago in uproar, their schools are being taken over. And it is these agents on the border with smiles on their faces saying, I don't know, I'm getting paid.
Just doing my job.
I'm getting paid. It's great. I get my paycheck. Hey, man, I don't care about what's happening to this country. I don't care what happens to you. I don't care how many people die. I don't care how many people die trying to cross through these deserts. They are getting paid, and that's all they care about. I hope, if anything, and I don't believe this will happen, but I really hope that when Donald Trump gets elected, one of the first things he does is sends federal agents to arrest all of the agents that were involved in the human smuggling operations. Is the first thing he does. When he begins his mass wave of deportations, he says, the first thing we have to do is stop the human smuggling operation and those who facilitated it. We know for a fact who it was because their names are all in our books. And so I'm going to make sure I do everything in my power, that I lobby every politician I know, that I speak with anyone I know who's working in government and say, I expect these men to be in prison. Now, to be fair, I expect criminal charges to be brought against them, the evidence to be presented in a court of law, and for the sentence to be warranted for the crime committed. And I don't know, how many years do you think you get for human smuggling?
I'm going to look it up.
Not enough.
Yeah, probably
10 to
not
20?
enough. Maybe just a couple 100 hours community service.
Oh, yeah.
Something like that?
The weed psychosis lady. No, but look, there's going to be some guy who's 23 and he's like, I don't know. My boss just told me to be a human smuggler. And I'm like, okay. I'm looking forward to the day you cry and you cry as you're being ripped from your home and thrown into the back of a police car.
Do you think that some of these people should be charged with treason for aiding and abetting the invasion of our country?
It's not treason, it's sedition.
Oh, okay. Or sedition. Do you think some of these people should be charged with some of that? I know there's a little bit different than the
not the
child
agents.
trafficking. Correct.
So the higher ranking agents who are aware of what's going on, yes, they're involved in a seditious conspiracy. I think the agents on the border who are just told, hey, be a human smuggler, they know they're trafficking humans.
Yeah, there's no way they don't know at this point.
They know. So that would be a human smuggling.
Can't plead
charge.
ignorance at this
Smuggling
point.
non-citizens into the U.S., it looks like it's punishable by up to 20 years in prison.
Great. That's a good amount of time.
It can be extended to life if someone dies as a result.
Well, there's been a lot that's died.
And there are already stories that we've pulled up where people have been criminally charged by the DOJ for transporting within the country criminal aliens. So there were two soldiers, two enlisted guys who didn't smuggle these guys across the border. They were just transporting them knowing they were getting paid to do it. And they went to prison. That was several years ago. I think that was during the Trump years. Now the Biden administration ordered these guys to be criminal. I'm sorry, dude. If your boss comes to you and says rob a bank and you go, I guess I have to do it, I look forward to seeing you in prison. Now, real quick, the higher ups in the Biden administration, seditious conspiracy 100%. Lock them up.
I just think this is the point where people who work as border agents for the federal government should consider leaving for, to be a border agent joining the Texas National Guard. They should move to the state level because it seems, at least in this case, like the states are willing to do something the federal government isn't, which is to defend the rights of the people in their communities. I get that the idea of being like, you can't just ask them to leave their jobs is scary. I understand that, but they are in a specialized career where, as far as I know, it's chronically understaffed at the state and federal level. So they could leave. They could change.
They could at least be whistleblowers.
Yeah. No. You come to me and you say, Tim, I can't quit my job because my kids need food. And I say, okay, what's your job? I work at the cracker factory and I want to support Trump. My company's super woke and I'm scared if I speak up, I'll get fired. How am I going to feed my family? I say, well, that's a tough position. I understand. Yeah. I do. Do your best, make money, protect your family. You come to me and say, I can't quit my job. My kid needs food. I go, what's your job? I'm a human smuggler. I say, I look forward to seeing you locked up. I look forward to the day your children are crying as they are ripped from your arms as you are thrown in the back of a police van for being a human smuggler. You do not get to live in the comfort of your own home as a human smuggler. These are some of the darkest and most evil actions a person could engage in. And these guys are like, well, my boss told me to do it. I don't care.
But you could
I have
also have
zero sympathy. Lock them up.
You could also have a boss on a state level that's like, no, more razor wire. Don't do that. Like, you're choosing to work for the federal government where this is the order you're getting. There are states that wouldn't make you do this.
Sure, quit. If you're in CBP, quit right now. If you work for the Customs and Border Protection and you are getting a paycheck, knowing what they are doing, and you say, yeah, but my kid needs food, I want you in prison. I don't care. I have no sympathy whatsoever. I don't care what job you're doing. You are facilitating this. When we have the majority of people in this country citing immigration as the principal issue, when you have Democrats and Republicans in uproar, when Biden laughs and says the border's not secure, knowing what he's doing, and you're like, I'm part of an organization that operates human smuggling operation, and I'm like, stop, don't do that. And you go, but my kids need food. Okay, well, bank robbers' kids need food. And when they say, I robbed a bank because I wanted to feed my family, we still put them in prison.
I think that's a reasonable point. It does remind me a lot of the Nazi guards who were just doing their jobs.
Yep.
We still dragged a bunch of them back from Argentina or wherever and put them on trial at The Hague. Didn't we do that?
But at some point, you got to
like
look
we did
yourself in
that.
the mirror and ask if what you're doing is moral or not. I mean, that's what it is. This is everything we're really dealing with in our country, in my opinion, is spiritual warfare. We've got a lot of good versus evil going on in our country. And people, to Tim's point, they make excuses and say, well, I'm just doing this or I've got to do it for this reason. But what you're doing is one of the most cruel, unjust things you could ever do, which is aiding and abetting and actually participating in smuggling, not just humans, but I mean, children. This is absolutely despicable. And I love your outrage and I share it with you.
We had Michael Mals came on the show a long time ago and he said that, I'm paraphrasing, but the actions of politicians are letters to Santa without the police.
Yeah.
It is the actions of, and so I've had a lot of people try to make this play. Politicians come in here. I'm like, no, you can't blame the cops. They're good people. It's the leadership that's bad. I say, I don't care about leadership. Bill de Blasio can go out in the middle of the street, buck naked, scream into the wind for all I care. It's meaningless. But if he does it and the cops then protect him while he's doing it, now that's the problem. The individual officers who are engaging in this activity. This goes back to when de Blasio stole taxpayer funds to paint Black Lives Matter in front of Trump's Fifth Avenue building and then used, I think it was like 27 police officers to protect it. So stealing from the public coffers for a political purpose, for personal gain.
Yep. And
those cops had smiles on their faces while they did what they were told. That's policing in New York City. Now, I mean, what we're seeing at Eagle Pass, and not just Eagle Pass, but in Arizona and New Mexico, is shocking. What is it, an 80-year-old guy? How old's that old man?
I think he's 82, but I'll double check.
Cartel activity on his property.
Yeah.
He defends himself.
Yep.
They arrest him. They lock him up. That's why I'm like, no, there's no sympathy at this point. It's not just about one thing happening one time. It's about the state of the country and where we are right now, where you defend your property, you go to prison.
74, sorry.
He was 74 years old.
Just like the
I
McCluskeys.
just aged him so dramatically.
Remember the McCluskeys? They
Yeah.
had to get a pardon just
Yeah.
for standing outside of their home being like, don't you guys come in.
People broke in, ripped the fence down.
Yeah.
And they brandished firearms and they got in trouble for it.
And that's the thing, though. Like, if I really believe if the American people thought that they were able to go to the border and help Texas National Guard defend the border right now and secure a border, you would see American patriots who would willingly go do this. But they can't because they're going to get thrown in prison if they were to even think about doing that. If they went down there at all, I mean, they're threatening to arrest people for holding a video camera and videotaping it. Could you imagine
They
what would
have
happen?
been doing that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Could you imagine if someone was down there saying, "We're not going to let you in"? What they would do to these people?
Meanwhile, isn't it crazy that Texas had to make a law that illegally entering Texas
Yeah.
is
from
illegal.
from an international border was illegal?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's just insane. They started
More
arresting
so,
people the other day.
The federal government tried stopping them.
Yes.
Well, and there's really technically when you get into the roles of the federal government, they're really limited on what they're supposed to do. They've gotten way too big for their britches and everything. But
Well, look at
one
all
of the
these
few
federal
things they're supposed
agencies.
but one of the things they're supposed to do is actually secure the border.
You have
one of
so
the-
many few true
Yeah.
jobs, and you
then-
won't do it.
Exactly.
And
That's
they're
the
supposed
point.
to protect states from invasion. What is it like?
Yes.
Yeah, they're supposed to definitely do that. It's interesting looking at the Supreme Court and giving them the benefit of the doubt, right?
Yeah.
Like, let's say we could give them the benefit of the doubt. If you look at some of their other cases recently, or if you look at the oral arguments in Chevron the other day, the EPA versus West Virginia, even Dobbs, if you look at these things, what they're doing is they are handing power back to the legislators.
Yep.
They're taking it away from the courts. They're saying, and if you look at this situation, they're saying the court This lower court does not have the right to decide what the federal government can do in this border situation. So you wonder, like, perhaps the Texas state legislature should start taking this stuff up, and
Perhaps Congress should look into impeaching some of these Supreme Court justices
won't do
who
it.
are doing it. I know, I would. I'm telling you right now, day one, I'd be filing articles of impeachment.
Impeaching Mayorkas. It doesn't make any sense that they're not.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.